Okay, guys, it's time for the last act of Romeo and Juliet. This resolution of our play ends in this kind of dramatic finale here. So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. Just so this video is not as long. But Act 5 begins with Romeo and Mantua. Finally, we get to see what he's been up to since he got banished. Not much it seems. He's still just sad about not being with Juliet, and one of the Montague servants comes to see Romeo with some news. So Balthazar, who is a Montague servant who Romeo has kind of arranged to come visit him to deliver him some news, arrives. And I want you to keep in mind that it is not Friar John that is coming to him with news. Remember, Friar John is who Friar Lawrence sent. So Balthazar was not sent by Friar Lawrence. So we're going to see how that plays out here. But in the moment when Romeo is approached by Balthazar, he is just super sad boy still, even more sad boy than he was about Rosalind, because we have Juliet. Juliet and his love have been split apart now because Juliet's in Verona and Romeo is in Mantua. So he is very, very sad when this picks up, and now he is waiting for some news from Balthazar. Let's go ahead and get started. Enter Romeo's man, Balthazar. News from Verona? How now, Balthazar? Dost thou not bring me letters from the friar? How doth my lady? Is my father well? How fares my Juliet? That I ask again, for nothing can be ill if she is well. So he does not know what's going on yet. He asked, did you bring me notes from Friar Lawrence? Did you ask, how's my mom? How's my dad? And how is my wife, Juliet? Balthazar says, then she is well, and nothing can be ill. Her body sleeps in Capulet's monument, and her immortal part with angels lives. I saw her laid low in her kindred's vault, and presently took post it to tell you. Oh, pardon me for bringing these ill news, since you did leave it for my office, sir. So Balthazar gets straight to it, and he says, I saw Juliet being put into the Capulet tomb, and she's dead. Sorry. You did ask me for these news. Then Romeo, we're going to see how he reacts to this news. Is it e'en so? Then I defy you, stars. Thou knowest my lodging. Give me ink and paper and hire post horses. I will hence tonight. So what he says is, I'm going straight to Verona tonight to be with Juliet. Balthazar says, I do beseech you, sir, have patience. Your looks are pale and wild, and do import some misadventure. Romeo says, tush, thou art deceived. Leave me and do the thing I bid thee do. Hast thou not letters to me from the friar? Balthazar says, no, my good lord. Romeo says, no matter. Get thee gone and hire those horses. I'll be with thee straight. So Romeo is expecting notes from Friar Lawrence, because Friar Lawrence told him he was going to send him his plan. But he has received nothing because Friar John has not made it. Balthazar made it first. Balthazar exits. Well, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight. I want you to think of this double meaning here. That I will lie with thee tonight, normally meaning that I will share my bed with my wife. But in this one, I will lie with you tonight, he means that I'm going to die with you tonight. I'm going to lay next to your body, and I'm going to kill myself to be with you. Let's see for means. O mischief, thou art swift to enter the thoughts of desperate men. I do remember an apothecary, and hereabouts he dwells, which late I noted in tattered weeds with overwhelming brows, culling of simples. Meager were his looks, sharp misery had worn him to the bones, and in his needy shop a tortoise hung an alligator stuffed and other skins of ill-shaped fishes, and about his shelves a beggarly account of empty boxes, green either in pots, bladders and musty seeds, remnants of packed third, and old cakes of roses were thinly scattered to make up a show. So what he's talking about right now is this apothecary, which is just basically kind of like a pharmacist, so kind of our modern understanding of apothecary. But they have a lot of potions and all that kind of stuff, normally to cure the sick. And this apothecary seems to be pretty run down, so he is not doing so well with his business. Noting this penury, I to myself I said, and if a man did need a poison now, whose sale is present death in Mantua, here lives a caitiff wretch who would sell it to him. Oh, this same thought did forerun my need, and this same needy man must sell it to me. As I remember, this should be the house. Being holiday, a beggar shop is shut. What ho, apothecary! So what Romeo says is he saw that this apothecary was pretty run down, that he was poor, that he was kind of existing in this realm of poverty. And so Romeo says, if I was to look for someone to sell me poison, which is illegal in Mantua, and if someone sold me poison, then we both die if we were caught, if we were found out. That I'd probably go to the poor one, because he would probably have less morals when it comes to selling me this poison. So he walks up to the apothecary's shop and he yells for the apothecary. Enter the apothecary. The apothecary responds, who calls so loud? Romeo says, come hither, man. I see that thou art poor. Hold, here are 40 ducats. Let me have a dram of poison, such soon speeding gear as I will disperse itself through all the veins, that is the life-weary taker may fall dead, and that the trunk may be discharged of breath as violently as hasty power fired doth hurry from a fatal cannon's womb. We have that as hasty power fired doth harry from a fatal cannon's womb, as violates a simile, comparing life to leaving the body, just like a cannon fire and comes out of a cannon or a cannonball. And so what Romeo is saying here is that he wants this potion to kill him quickly, so that he can be with Juliet in death. Apothecary says, such mortal drugs I have, but Mantua's law is death to any he that utters them. Romeo says, art thou so bare and full of wretchedness, and fearest to die? Famine is in thy cheeks, need and oppression starveth in thine eyes, contempt and beggary hangs upon thy back. The world is not thy friend, nor the world's law. The world affords no law to make it thee rich. Then be not poor, but break it and take this. He holds out the money. So basically, he's making his argument here. He's saying to this apothecary, you're poor. I can see you're really hungry. You're going to die anyway if you don't get food. So take this money and give me the potion. The apothecary says, my poverty, but not my will, consents. So he gives in. He says, okay, I'll give it to you, but not because I don't have any morals, but because I'm poor. Romeo says, I pay thy poverty and not thy will. The apothecary gives Romeo the poison and says, put this in any liquid thing you will and drink it off. And if you had the strength of 20 men, it would dispatch you straight. So it's a really strong poison. Romeo gives the apothecary the money and says, there is thy gold, worse poison to men's souls, doing more murder in this loathsome world than these poor compounds that thou mayest not sell. Again, he's kind of giving that little commentary on money there. The fact that money and power and status is basically what's caused the fights between the Montagues and the Capulets, which does more harm than the actual poison that he just bought from this apothecary. I sell thee poison, thou hast sold me none. Farewell, my food, and get thyself in flesh. Come, cordial and not poison, go with me to Juliet's grave, for there I must use thee. Romeo exits. So a little summary of what happens in the scenes that we're going to skip over here in Act 5. Act 5, Scene 2 sees Friar Lawrence talking to Friar John. Friar John comes back to Verona and never ever made it to Romeo. Friar John was supposed to ride to Mantua to tell Romeo about the plan. However, he was unable to make it because he passed through a town dealing with the plague. So he was blocked from Mantua. So basically he was like quarantined, what we're experiencing now. Quarantined in a town in between Verona and Mantua and was unable to make it to Romeo. Friar Lawrence realizes that this means Romeo doesn't know the plan, and he decides to go be with Juliet so he can explain what has happened when Juliet wakes up. He has no realization that Romeo has found out anything about her death at this point. Act 5, Scene 3 sees Paris mourning outside of Juliet's tomb. Paris sends a servant to keep watch. His servant hides to see if anyone approaches, and at that moment, Romeo approaches the tomb, ready to kill himself so that he can join Juliet in death. Paris hears him and hides to watch what he does, and this is the most dramatic, the most dramatic part of the play. It's about to happen in this scene, Act 5, Scene 3. Okay, so Paris is in the bushes watching Romeo. Romeo is walking up to the tomb. He has made it back from Mantua. He's in Verona again. Paris moves away from the tomb. Enter Romeo and Balthazar. Romeo says, give me that mattock and the wrenching iron. Takes them from Balthazar, so tools from Balthazar. Hold, take this letter. Early in the morning, see thou deliver it to my lord and my father. Gives the letter to Balthazar. Give me the light. Takes the torch from Balthazar. Upon thy life I charge thee. Whatever thou hearest or seest, stand all aloof, and do not interrupt me in my course. Why I descend into this bed of death is partly to behold my lady's face. So he's saying to Balthazar, you need to stand over there. In the morning, you need to deliver this letter because I will be dead. It's going to explain what has happened to my father. But you must not interrupt me in what I'm doing as I descend into this bed of death. That's that metaphor there, comparing this tomb to a bed, somewhere where you go to lie and be dead. It's partly to behold my lady's face, but chiefly to take thence from her dead finger a precious ring, a ring that I must use in dear employment. Therefore, hence be gone. But if thou, jealous, dost return to pry in what thy father intend to do, by heaven I will tear thee joint by joint and strew this hungry churchyard with thy limbs. The time and my intents are savage, wild, more fierce and more inexorable, far than empty tigers or the roaring sea. Gosh, my pronunciation there. So what Romeo is saying to Balthazar is that he is going into this tomb in order to take the ring from Juliet's finger. He is making up this excuse. He doesn't want to tell Balthazar that he's going to go in there to die because Balthazar would probably try to stop him, doesn't really know what the situation is going on, so he makes up this lie. Remember, Paris is listening. So Paris has now heard Romeo admit that he's going to go into the tomb to defile these bodies and take this ring. So he's obviously going to react. Balthazar says, I will be gone, sir, and not trouble you. Romeo says, so shalt thou show me friendship, take thou that. Gives Balthazar money. Live and be prosperous, and farewell, good fellow. Balthazar aside says, "For all this same, I'll hide me here about. His looks I fear, and his intents I doubt." So Balthazar says, "I'm not gonna fully listen to this guy. I'm gonna watch what he does, because I doubt whatever he just said to me." Balthazar moves aside and falls asleep. Romeo says, "Thou detestable maw, thou womb of death, gorged with the nearest morsel of the earth, thus I enforce thy rotten jaws to open, and in despite I'll cram thee with more food." Looking at this metaphor here, comparing this tomb to a womb, and also to this kind of stomach, and the opening of the tomb to a mouth. And it says, "I'm going to cram thee with more food," comparing the dead bodies, including Romeo and Juliet and Tybalt and all the other Capulets, as food for this stomach. It's a really disgusting image of a tomb. He begins to open the tomb with his tools. Paris, aside, so to the audience, says, "That is that banished haughty Montague that murdered my love's cousin, with which grief it is supposed the fair creature died." So at this point, they all think Paris, Lady Capulet, Lord Capulet, the nurse, they all think that Juliet is dead from grief. The fact that she died because she was so sad that Tybalt is dead, which is ignorant. We know that's not actually what happened. "And here is come to do some villainous shame to the dead bodies. I will apprehend him." Now to Romeo, not to the audience anymore. "Stop thy unhallowed toil, vile Montague. Can vengeance be pursued further than death, condemned villain? I do apprehend thee. Obey and go with me, for thou must die." So what Paris says is that you need to come with me. I'm going to take you to Princess Gallus because you have been exiled and now you must die. Romeo says, "I must indeed, and therefore came I hither. Good gentle youth, tempt me not a desperate man. Fly hence and leave me. Think upon these gone. Get them affright thee, I beseech thee, youth. Put not another sin upon thy head, by urging me to fury. Oh, be gone! By heaven, I love thee better than myself, for I come hither armed against myself. Stay not, be gone. Live in hereafter. Stay a madam's mercy. Bid thee run away." So what Romeo is saying to him is, please, please let me do what I came here to do, because I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to have another sin on my head. And he says that I love you better than I love myself, because I actually came here to kill myself. I came here with the intention of not making it out if you're alive. So I love you better than I love myself. So please leave me. Paris says, "I do defy the combination and apprehend thee for a felon here." So Paris is not listening to what Romeo said. He's continuing to be confrontational to him. Romeo says, "Wilt thou provoke me? Then have at it, thee boy." Romeo and Paris fight. The page says, "Oh Lord, they fight. I will go call the watch." Remember, the watch are the people who watch over Verona. Exit the page. That is Paris' servant. He leaves. Paris falls and says, "Oh, I am slain. If thou be merciful, open the tomb. Lay me with Juliet." And Paris dies. So Romeo has killed yet another person. At this point, Romeo has killed Tybalt and has also killed Paris. He has another sin on his head, like he would call it. And then we see that Paris's dying wish is that he was taken into the tomb to be lain with Juliet, even though he's not a Capulet. Romeo says, "In faith I will. Let me peruse this face. Mercutio's kinsman, noble county Paris. What said my man when my betossed soul did not attend him as we rode? I think he told me Paris should have married Juliet. Said he not so? Or did I dream it so? Or am I mad, hearing him talk of Juliet, to think it was so? Oh, give me thy hand, one writ with me in sour misfortune's book. I'll bury thee in a triumphant grave." Again, Romeo is kind of relating everything that he does to this misfortune, the fact that he's fortune's fool, he's unlucky, that he has killed yet another person. But he says, "I'll put you in the tomb with Juliet because I know, or I think I might have heard, that you were supposed to have married her." Romeo opens the tomb to reveal Juliet inside. A grave? Oh no, a lantern, slaughtered youth. For here lies Juliet, and her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence full of light. Death, lie thou there, by a dead man interred, lays Paris in the tomb. So he walks in, he sees Juliet again. This comparison, this metaphor to light. Remember whenever Juliet comes out on the balcony, he compares her to the sun, the one that's supposed to come out and kill the envious moon. He's comparing her to this light in this dark tomb again. A lot of light imagery when it comes to discussing Juliet in this play. So now Romeo is giving us a very long soliloquy here because he is technically not alone on the stage because there are other actors, but they are just laying dead, so no one's alive. So he's giving this speech to no one who is listening, okay? "How oft, when men are at the point of death, have they been merry, which their keepers call a lightning before death? Oh, how may I call this a lightning? Oh, my love, my wife! Death that hath sucked the honey of thy breath hath no power yet upon thy beauty. Thou art not conquered. Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advanced there." What Romeo points out here is that she still has color in her lips and in her cheeks. He says, "You have not turned pale yet." So, Romeo, is an idiot in this scene because he still thinks she's dead. He sees all these signs for things that she's not dead. The fact that she still has color in her face and her lips and her cheeks, and he's like, "Oh, you're just so beautiful when you're dead. You're such a cute dead person." Instead of actually thinking, "Are you not actually dead?" And death's pale flag is not advanced there. Tybalt, liest thou here in thy bloody sheet? Oh, what more favor can I do to thee than with that hand that cut thy youth in twain to sunder his that was thine enemy? So he looks at Tybalt and he says, "What more can I do for you other than to kill myself because I was the one who killed you, give you that revenge even in death? Forgive me, cousin. Ah, dear Juliet, why art thou yet so fair? Shall I believe that unsubstantial death is amorous, and that the lean abhorred monster keeps thee here in dark to be his paramour? For fear of that, I will stay with thee, and never from this palace of dim night depart again. Here will I remain with worms that are thy chambermaids. Oh, here will I set up my everlasting rest, and shake the yoke of inauspicious stars from the world-wearied flesh. Eyes, look your last. Arms, take your last embrace, and lips, oh, you the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss, a dateless bargain to engrossing death. He kisses Juliet, takes out the poison. Come, bitter conduct, come, unsavory guide, thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick, weary bark. Here's to my love, drink the poison. O true apothecary, the drugs are quick. Thus, with a kiss, I die. He kisses Juliet, he falls dramatically to the ground because he's now dead. Romeo, arguably our biggest main character in this play, is gone. He's dead. And so there it is, folks. Romeo's killed himself with a poison because he thinks Juliet is dead. However, she is actually just laying there looking like she is dead when she is actually alive. That is an perfect example of dramatic irony, because in the audience, we know she's not dead, but we just watched Romeo kill himself. Now, Friar Lawrence comes into the tomb to find a dead Romeo just as Juliet is waking up. Again, that perfect irony there. She wakes up right after he kills himself. Juliet wakes up. Oh, comfortable friar, where is my lord? I do remember well where I should be, and there I am in the tomb. She's in the tomb, and she looks around and says, "Where is my Romeo?" A noise sounds from outside of the tomb. Friar Lawrence says to her quickly, "I hear some noise, lady, come from that nest of death, contagion and unnatural sleep. A greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intents. Come away. Thy husband in thy bosom there lies dead, and Paris too. Come, I'll dispose of thee among a sisterhood of holy nuns. Stay not to question, for the watch is coming. Come, go, Juliet, I dare no longer stay." So what Friar Lawrence is trying to do is get Juliet to come with him, because he points out Romeo's dead, Paris is dead, we got to get out of here or we look super guilty. And he says that I'm going to hide you away in a nunnery because you can't suddenly be alive anymore because your entire family and everyone in Verona thinks you're dead. So I'm going to hide you away in a nunnery so that no one will ever find you. You're going to become a nun in a convent. Juliet says, "Go, get thee hence, for I will not away." So she's not going to leave and exit Friar Lawrence. So Friar Lawrence says, "Fine." He turns tail and runs out. Juliet says again to herself here, because she's alone, this is soliloquy, "What's here? A cup? Closed in my true love's hand? Poison? I see hath been his timeless end. O churl, drunk all and left no friendly drop to help me after. I will kiss thy lips. Haply some poison yet doth hang on them to make me die with a restorative." Kisses Romeo. Thy lips are warm. What Juliet does here is that she looks at the potion, is annoyed that Romeo didn't leave any for her. Why would he? Because he thinks she's dead. But now she's looking for a way to join him in death. Enter the Watchman and Paris's page. So this is going to be on like another part of the stage, technically, that is showing the outside of the tomb. The chief watchman says, "Lead, boy, which way?" And then Juliet is hearing them outside, and she says inside of the tomb, "Yeah, noise? Then I'll be brief. Oh, happy dagger." She picks up the knife, one of Romeo's. "This is thy sheath. There rust and let me die." She stabs herself with Romeo's dagger and falls dramatically onto him, and she also dies. And there you have it. Juliet has now killed herself, so both of them lay dead in the tomb. In perfect timing, the city wakes up and finds the bodies. Lord Montague and the Capulets also show up at the tomb. Lady Montague is already dead from grief at this point, so we have another tragic death. Another part of this tragedy is that Lady Montague, Romeo's mother, died of grief when Romeo was banished. We just didn't get to see it in the play. And the prince comes and asks Friar Lawrence what happened, and Friar Lawrence is going to fill him in. The prince says, "Then say at once what thou dost know in this." Friar Lawrence says, "I will be brief, for my short date of breath is not so long as is a tedious tale. Romeo, there dead, was husband to that Juliet, and she, there dead, that Romeo's faithful wife. I married them, and then their stolen marriage day was Tybalt's doomsday, whose untimely death banished the new-made bridegroom from the city. For whom, and not for Tybalt, Juliet pined. You, to remove that siege of grief from her, betrothed and would have married her perforce to county Paris. Then comes she to me, and with her wild looks bid me devise some mean to rid her from this second marriage. Or in my cell there she would kill herself. Then gave I her, so tutored by my art, a sleeping potion, which so took effect as I intended, for it wrought on her the form of death. So what he says here is he's basically laying out exactly what had happened, incriminating himself by telling him what happened, but also making an excuse for himself. He says to Lord Capulet here, he says, Lord Capulet, Juliet came to me because you said that she had to marry Paris and have this second marriage. She came to me and threatened to kill herself in my cell. What was I supposed to do? I had to help her. Meantime, I write to Romeo that he should hither come as this dire night to help her take from her borrowed grave, being the time the potion's force should cease. But he which bore my letter, Friar John, was stayed by accident, and yesternight returned my letter back. Then all alone, in the prefixed hour of her waking, came I to take her from her kindred's vault, meaning to keep her closely at my cell till I conveniently could send to Romeo. But when I came, some minute ere the time of her awakening, here untimely lay the noble Paris and true Romeo dead. She wakes, and I entreated her come forth, and bear this work of heaven with patience. But then a noise did scare me from the tomb, and she, too desperate, would not go with me, but as it seems, did violence on herself. All this I know, and to the marriage her nurse is privy, and if aught is this miscarried by my fault, let my old life be sacrificed some hour before his time unto the rigor of severest law. So what he does is he lays out exactly what has happened, exactly what happened in this moment. He went to the tomb because he knew his letter didn't get to Romeo, to try to save or be there when Juliet wakes up and hide her in the cell so he could then send a letter to Romeo and be like, yo, I got your wife in my cell. You can take her. Everyone thinks she's dead. But when he got there, he found Romeo was dead. And then we saw everything was happening with Juliet killing herself as well. And he also, in the last moment, which seems kind of unnecessary, throws the nurse under the bus. He said, unto the marriage, her nurse is privy for really no reason. He's like, that girl over there, she knows too. It wasn't just me. And the prince says, we still have known thee for a holy man. Where's Romeo's man? What can he say in this? Balthazar, Romeo's servant, comes forward and says, I brought my master news of Juliet's death, and then in post he came to Mantua, to this same place, to this same monument. Shows a letter. This letter he early bid me give his father, and threatened me with death, going in the vault, if I departed not and left him here. The prince says, give me the letter, I will look on it. Takes the letter from Balthazar. Where's the county's page that raised the watch? Sirrah, what made your master in this place? The page says, he came with flowers to strew his lady's grave, and bid me stand aloof, and so I did. Anon comes with light to open the tomb, and by my master drew on him, and then I ran away to call the watch. The prince, skimming the letter, says, this letter doth make good the friar's words, their course of love, the tidings of her death, and here he writes that he did buy a poison of a poor apothecary, and therewithal came to this vault to die and lie with Juliet. Where be these enemies? Capulet, Montague, see what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love, and I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished. So what he says is he pulls Lord Capulet and Lord Montague up, and he says, look at what has happened because you are fighting. I have lost family members because Paris was his family member, so was Mercutio. He says, you have lost your son, Lord Montague. You have lost your only daughter, Lord Capulet. Your unnecessary fight has caused the death of so many people at this point. Capulet, turning to Lord Montague, says, O brother Montague, give me thy hand. This is my daughter's jointure, for no more can I demand. Montague says, but I can give thee more, for I will raise her statue in pure gold, that whiles Verona by that name is known, there shall be no figure at such rate be set as that of true and faithful Juliet. And Capulet says, as rich shall Romeo's by his ladies lie, poor sacrifices of our enmity. So what he says is, what they both say is that, forgive me. Montague says, I will build a statue of Juliet and put her up there so she is the most beautiful statue of gold in this whole city. And then Lord Capulet says the same thing. I'll build a statue of Romeo right next to her so they can live together in this statue of gold. Now the prince, with his last part of the play, the last lines, says, a glooming peace this morning with it brings. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned and some punished, for never was a story of more woe than this of her Juliet and her Romeo. So he kind of ties up the story here, says that There was never a story that was this sad, full of pain as Romeo and Juliet. It truly is this perfect example of a tragedy, and that is the end. Princess Gales has learned the truth, and so has the rest of Verona. The deaths of Romeo and Juliet have made the Montagues and the Capulets see how stupid their fighting is, and they agreed to stop. So the prologue of the play was true, that only their deaths could bring the family together. Remember, it said that right in the start of the play. It is true for Verona that never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. Now, that is it. You finished Romeo and Juliet. You have some activities to be completing. You need to be preparing for this test. But that is it for today, guys. Thanks.